This tutorial will teach you how to use laser settings and apply them to objects that you wish to mark. Now, laser settings are combinations of specific parameters that you can adjust, and they influence how the laser will affect the material. So different materials are going to prefer different settings in order to get the optimized mark, and likewise you can use different combinations of settings on the same material and achieve different marks. If you have not yet read through how the laser settings work, and what we're talking about is the basic principles behind them, and the most common are power, frequency, and speed, then I would recommend that you come to our website, and I will show you where you can get this document on the website. So you're just going to come to permanentmarking.com. You're going to come over to Services, go to Downloads. You're going to scroll down, and under Laser Programming and Marking Downloads, there is a Laser Settings Guide. I will launch this for you. It'll launch in the browser. And you'll want to get this document and print it out. Now, as I go through, I'm just going to jump a few pages. But what you're going to see here is a good overview of the loop counter passes, power, frequency, speed, and then we also talk about fill in this. And here is a good explanation for each item: laser power, frequency, and scan speed. So again, that is available on our website, permanentmarking.com. Just go to Downloads, under Downloads, Laser Programming and Marking, and download the Laser Settings Guide. We're going to come back to our software now. So understanding that you have reviewed the laser parameters, we're going to talk about them. The marking parameters are all listed on the right side of your screen, and this is where you're going to choose them and apply them to objects. At the top you have a pen listing, different color pens, and we'll come to that in a moment. You have some color blocks here, and then you have all of your adjustable parameters shown here. As you can see, by default, when you first start the software or open a new program or create a new object, it is always going to use the default parameters. So to manipulate the settings, to be able to adjust these, we have to uncheck this box. Now, the default parameters are set at general settings, which will typically burn into any material somewhat, and that is speed of 200, power of 100, frequency of 20,000 hertz with one pass. But that's not going to cut it when it comes to optimizing your marking. So we're going to adjust these. So first, let's come to the black pen up here. I'm just going to select this. Now you can see over here on the screen we have two text objects that are already created, and those are both black, which means that they are going to follow this black pen, this pen 0, which is our default pen. And when we create a new object, it is typically black in color. So I'm going to uncheck this use default parameters, and now you can see I can manipulate these different settings. I've got loop count at 1, that's going to mark each object one time. Speed at 200, that means as it's marking and filling, it's going to travel at a rate of 200 millimeters per second. Power at 100%, which means that I'm using the full power of my laser, whether that be 10, 20, 30, 50 watt, so on and so forth. Frequency at 20, and this is in kilohertz, so that means that it is at 20,000 hertz. Now, all of the Tykma lasers by default have a frequency range of 1,000 to 200,000 hertz, and our 30 watt model has a range of 1,000 to 1 million hertz. Frequency is very important, and again, I encourage you to make sure you read up on this in our laser programming guide, our laser settings guide that we listed there on the website. Now we have some other settings as well. We have wave, which is a selectable waveform. That's only applicable to our 30 watt customers, and they will receive advanced training on that. We're not going to discuss that in this tutorial. And we've also got some delays here that you can manipulate. Now, the delays that Tykma provides to you, 100, 100, 400, and 100, these are all delays that I recommend you stick with for all of your markings. You're only going to want to change these delays if you have a very particular application where we're trying to control the start and stop points of the laser as the laser is creating characters or objects. For now, you want to leave those alone, however, and stick with our basic settings. These have been optimized to give you optimum marking quality and results for most marking that you're going to see. We have CW down here. This is to put the laser in constant waveform. You don't want to apply this, and it's actually not going to work based on the way that our systems are programmed, but it is an option for some customers that may need it. Again, advanced training. We've got a box here that you can click, and it's going to open a pop-up. And this gives you a representation of your basically your speed and your frequency together and how that's going to affect the material. You can see these circles here represent laser dots. As the laser is marking, the frequency is because it's pulsing, is going to create pieces of light, and that's what these circles represent, pieces of light hitting the material. You can see at 20,200 where we're at now, if we increase this speed, those dots get spaced out further together. So if we go at a faster rate of speed, we need to increase our frequency to put the dots closer together. Now that's not an exact science, so we really don't recommend using this as a way to set up your laser settings, because it's not going to give you the right combination necessarily for the material, but it's a good representation tool to understand how your speed and frequency will affect each other in your marking. Go ahead and cancel this so it doesn't take. Down here we've got a parameter library. You can select settings from the laser parameter library. I'm going to click that, and you can see now we've got several choices in here. So let's assume that I am marking these two text boxes, and I'm marking them on, let's say, a stainless, and I want to do an anneal mark. Okay, the first thing it's going to tell me is that what type of mark it is, what type of material. And I'm also going to get the recommended fill settings that I would want to use. And you can see here we've got two fills, one at 90, one at 270, and we're going to use 0.02 as our fill space. That is a recommendation based on the type of mark, and because when we choose these settings, it does not change the fill. You will need to go ahead and change that. It will, however, adjust the speed, power, frequency, and loop count for you. So this is a very handy marking parameter library that we provide to you. So now we want to show you very quickly how to install this laser parameter library. I'll go ahead and cancel this for now. We will come back to it. To install the parameter library, I'm simply going to come back to our website. On our website again, we have the marking parameters library file. I'm going to go ahead and download this, and I'm going to save this to my desktop. And you can see I've downloaded it before. I'm just going to overwrite it. It's going to download, and it's done. Now that it's downloaded, I'm just going to come to my desktop. You can see it's right here listed as a zip file. I'm going to double click to extract, and I'm just going to drag this out and put it on my desktop. Now within the computer environment or on your computer, to install this library file to get those settings I just referenced, you're going to go to your C drive. If you're on a 64-bit machine, you're going to go to Program Files x86. You're going to go down and you're going to find Minilase Pro SE. You're going to go to a folder called Param, and you can see now here's where our marking parameter library file is stored. I'm just going to drag this in. It's going to ask me if I want to overwrite. I'm going to move and replace this, and now you can see I've installed my marking parameter library file. Now when you close your software and relaunch, you would have this select parameter from library. You would have this library of different settings for different materials available, and again that is available on our website. Very easy to install. So again, coming back, if I want to do annealing, I'm just going to choose this setting. I'm going to click OK, and now you can see my settings have changed. 2 passes, speed at 200, power at 50, frequency at 125. This is set up now to do a black annealed mark. Now let's say I want to make a black annealed mark with this object, and on this object I want to do a burn. So what I can do now is select a different pen, and that's where these pens come into play. This was my black pen, but for my blue pen I want to set up a different set of parameters because I want each object to look different on my material. I'm going to click off. You always want to click off of your object so that you have no objects selected, and I'm going to come over here to my blue pen. Now that I've selected my blue pen, you can see it's still using the default parameters. Uncheck that, I'm going to go back to my library and let's go to a metal burn mark. I'm going to click OK, and now you can see for my blue pin I have different settings, 100, 100, and 20,000. Likewise, it suggested a fill for me. So the way I apply this now that I've set up my blue pin, and I'll show you again, my black pin is different. If you watch the settings here, they will change between the two pins. If I go to my object that I want to mark with this blue pin and select it, I can now come back up here and right click on my mouse and use apply to pick object. Now that I've done that, I've selected this object and applied this blue pin. This object is going to burn. This object, likewise, as you can see, is going to follow the black pin settings, so it's going to anneal. So this is how we can apply different settings to different objects within the same marking file. And likewise, we can go down, if we click off and go down through, you can see that we can change all of these different pins. And there are a significant number of pins. So you can start setting custom colors once you get past 15. They're all black. But the pin number is listed here, and you can change those colors simply by double clicking on the object. Now you can see where you can choose different hues and pick a custom color for any object that you want to mark. I'm going to cancel that. So there's a lot of power here, a lot of capability. Likewise, if I wanted to change this color quickly, I can just simply click on my colors here and apply that. However, I do want to use my blue pin on that object. Now the other way that we can apply these pin colors is we can do it through our fill settings. So I'm going to show you that next. I'm going to come over here to my object that is using the black pin, and I'm going to come to my fill settings, as you should have already reviewed in a previous tutorial. When I launch this, you can now see within this fill settings that there is a pin number, which we mentioned earlier. For each different fill, if we do multiple fills, we can now apply different pins. Now, why is this important? It's important because it allows us to process an object on a piece of material with multiple settings in one single marking cycle. And so what that means is if we wanted to, let's say, do a deep engrave on a material, I would use one pin for my first fill, and that pin would be programmed over here for deep engraving, and I would likewise set up my fill. And let's say after the deep engraving cycle is done, on the next pass I want to come in and I want to clean it up a little bit, polish the bottom, get some of the burn out of there. What I can do then is set a separate pin. Let's say that's our red pin, pin 2. Once I set that pin, I'm just going to change my fill parameters here and click OK on this object. You can now see that this object has got two pins applied. It's got a black pin and it's got a red pin. So that's going to process the black setting first, and then likewise process the red pin. And that is how you apply multiple settings to one object. Again, it is through our pin settings. We can do multiple passes. Now we can add a third, and I'm just going to do that here. I'm going to leave it at 0.3 so you can see it at 45 degrees. And let's pick pin 3, which is green, and apply that. If I were to zoom in on this object, you can now see that I have my black pin, my red pin, and my green pin all set on one object. And you can see I also still have my blue pin set up over here. To manually change settings, for example on this yellow pin, which will undo default parameters, you're just going to come in and click in here, and you can type on your keyboard and hit enter. That is going to apply different settings. So very easy, very simple to understand, but a lot of power in here. Really gives you a lot of choices in your marking. That concludes our pin and marking parameter settings. And for more information, again, on how to optimize the settings, I recommend coming to our website and downloading under Services, Downloads, Laser Programming and Marking. Recommend downloading our Laser Settings Guide, which is going to give you all the settings you need along with fills and explain the different properties of the markings that you'll want to accomplish.